this time for Scott to do the presentation. You have 45 minutes, and after that we will continue with the question and answer. Thank you.
No problems at all. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to step you through this presentation. So to the senior leadership from ASIS International as well, obviously at the senior regional vice president, and chapters, welcome and thanks everybody. So I'll share my screen in a minute, but I suppose to give some background to this presentation that I'm going to step you through. Part of the presentations I try and do is to try and challenge your thinking a little bit. So whilst we're going to be stepping through some elements of social engineering and how that is used to defeat access controls, I'm going to give you some examples with that as well, so you understand how we use some of these elements to gain entry to a variety of premises, and some of the different silos that plug into what I'm going to say social engineering. So if there's any obviously questions with that, you're happy to stay as long as needed to answer any questions. And the last time I gave this presentation was or a version of this, the Security and Government exhibition here, where there was a large number of electronic security providers who were displaying their, obviously their goods. So the introduction saying that my presentation was all about how using the human factor and behavior analysis and management can beat those controls wasn't received very well with some of those people that are selling the electronic security equipment. But I'm very happy to share this with you, and yeah, so I'll kick that off now. 1 second. Get that done for the share screen. Okay, can everybody see that okay? The screen okay now?
Yeah, it's okay. We can see it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Fantastic. I'll turn my camera off because you don't need to see my my face at the same time. Okay, so the presentation we're going to be stepping through today is using social engineering to defeat access controls. When I'm personally providing any services or consulting in the different environment, I like to look at security solutions in a relatively simple form. I call it hardware, software, and what I say wetware. Hardware is your devices, your technology and systems. Your software is your processes, framework, operating guidelines. Getting some feedback from somebody who's not on mute. And then the wetware, which is the people. So the element that we're going to be stepping through with this is, in essence, about the use of identification of different behavioural traits and the use of influence and a range of other things to overcome different security procedures in place and layers of security. Social engineering at its base, as you can see, they're using psychological manipulation and deception in interaction to influence people to take actions and reveal information that may or may not be in their best interests. Now, at the absolute base level, from that social engineering point of view, this is used at a range of levels. And firstly, I'm going to say about some of the perils and pitfalls with the utilization of these sort of techniques. Quite often in the security consulting space, I'm asked to do a range of penetration testing, which is involving gaining access to the premises. And it's very important for the security professionals and consultants in this space to understand that you've also got to be managing things such as the pride elements and pride triggers of the clients that are engaging you as well. It's also a very important factor to take into account the risk appetite of the premises, like where you're going to be doing these penetration tests. So when it comes to look at some of the key elements that are used as part of this, so as we I suppose affectionately like to say, the arsenal, you've got a couple of things in there. Pretexting, phishing, baiting, and tailgating are just a few examples of some of the elements that are used in social engineering to try and gain access or gain to a premises or gain access to information that is often not in their best interest from sharing. Pretexting, in essence, is getting together that background story, the believable scenario that you're going to be using for when you're attending sites. So from that perspective,
20, bukan 19.
from that perspective, you know, like yeah, from a pretext point of view, it's not just about what you may originally think about what I'm going to attire in. Am I going to be dressed as a cleaner or anything like that? The pretexting is including the story. What do we know about this site and business? What do we know about their potential vulnerabilities? So if you've got a high security site, for example, if somebody's going to be using social engineering to try and gain access, they'd be looking at things like what suppliers do you have at different times? Is there waste suppliers? Is there cleaners? Is there staff that are not part of that, directly under control of that organization? And so there's vulnerabilities there because the fact that they may not have the same level of training, or they may not have that level of awareness, you know, as being as alert and vigilant. Phishing is obviously sending the persuasive messages that's got the malicious links. And that's obviously, there's been a massive increase in phishing activity. And without knowing, I suppose if similar ones are landing, obviously like across, you know, where you guys are from, but from, you know, phishing emails and others that are looking like, you know, from a banking point of view, or Netflix with a lot of people working from home, a lot of things based around the entertainment space, you know, those sort of things are definitely getting utilized. But baiting is one that I suppose it's in essence dangling bait in front of of people to make sure if they're going to take that bait up, and it's their response or reaction to that bait is what gives you access to information. When I'm normally talking about baiting, we'd normally talk about if there's a hard drive left out, or if there's a USB stick on a desk that says confidential or pay reviews or something like that. The other part to think of, and I often do this if I'm in a face-to-face room of security professionals, is that, you know, we've all come from a security and risk background, but can I ask you, for example, what have you told your children if they see a bright coloured USB stick in the garden around school? Now, quite often when I say that, I get everybody looking at each other in the room. And then when I go on to say, look, that's part of baiting, is that if your children see a bright coloured USB stick in a garden near school, the first thing they're going to do is put that in their pocket, come home and put it in your computer. And then obviously there can be lots of concerns from there. Yeah. So we sort of say some of these things just to understand, you know, and tie it back so you understand the elements we're talking about. Tailgating is another one you know, that's used, and tailgating in essence is, you know, as you can see in the picture on the bottom right, if there's different physical security elements in place, tailgating works because people can obviously go directly, you know, behind somebody that's going through that gate, or from a door area and things as well. In essence, though, the underlying part behind tailgating is if any organization, so if you're, you know, involved in, you know, the leadership, the management, or the security programs with any organization, if your organization has got that challenging culture in place, and it's got to be underpinned by customer service and as well, because that's a really important part about finding the balancing point with security, you know, security protocols and security frameworks, is any of the items that are going to be put in place from a security management point of view need to be underpinned by operational efficiency and need to be aligned with an organization's values as well. And so what happens is, if you've got an organization that is very customer service focused, often they don't want to challenge, they don't want to argue, like when people that are, you know, that are coming to the premises. So that's why tailgating can be so effective. To give you the example of how I most often use tailgating with the premises, and I can say I've used this technique in banking and finance, including some of the higher profile banks. I've used this around media sites and around a range of others. One of the first things that I'll be doing when I'm going to a site is I'll do a complete lap around the perimeter, and I'll have a look and see, for example, if there's any bricks near the fire escape doors or any cigarette butts, because that tells me straight away, I know at 10:30, at about lunchtime and mid-afternoon, there's a very high chance that there's some staff from inside are going to be coming out there for a smoke. Now, it's important to understand, I just need to be well placed there. So as soon as the very first person comes out, I start speaking to them. If I've got one of the other managers' names that I've got off LinkedIn or off that company website, as soon as I start speaking to that person, every other person out that comes out after that thinks, okay, Scott's speaking to this person speaking to this the first person that was there, he must be okay. So they're not going to question when I just followed him in the door and now I've got access to your premises. So the key underlying parts, like if with these, between obviously like the phishing, baiting, tailgating, is that we need to make sure obviously that there's that awareness, you know, of people being alert and vigilant. But there needs to be a security culture. So whether if it's your organization and you're the security lead, or if you're providing security services and advice to an organization, regardless of any electronic security measures that are in place, or regardless of any nice structured manuals and operating procedures, people gravitate to organizational culture, the way things are done around here. So it's important to make sure that, you know, any security solution is aligned with the right behavior and supported by the, you know, by the right behavior, because that's what's going to carry that forward. So from the pre-texting point of view, you know, I mentioned before, that's about just like with that preparation. That preparation, in essence, is just to try and build some rapport for when a social engineer is coming to the, you know, coming to that site. There's a couple of different ways that occurs, and in essence, from a pre-text point of view, and it may be that you're doing some penetration testing. So, you know, for example, so like, you know, what sort of things do you look at if you're doing this work? If I'm trying to gain access to an organization and I'm doing some penetration testing, the reconnaissance that we look at, that we do is, in essence, I need to make sure that my appearance, the words that I use, and even the body language that I use is going to try and disarm suspicion. I want to try and make these people feel comfortable, like with the way that I communicate, with my appearance. So it's a very, very important part to make sure we get that right. An example I'm going to expand on a little bit later on is going to be where I did some social engineering as part of some work I did for one of the high-profile financial institutions. They wanted to check the security integrity of what they had in place between their people, their processes, their devices, and a range of other items. The reconnaissance element I did with this, and this was one of their head offices, I literally, because I was going to be going there on a Wednesday and going in, I went there the day before. I spent about 15 minutes outside the premises because I just wanted to get a feel for how the people were dressed that were going to this site. Are they dressed in suit and tie, or are they just pants and a business shirt, or are they smart casual? What do they carry with them? Are they carrying briefcases, or for this area, this organization, do they carry, for example, backpacks and, you know, laptop bags and these sort of things? So I look at those sort of things, and also I'm going to say the way that they finish their appearance. Because organizations and people group and pod together, I look to see, for example, do they have brand name pens in their pockets and they're wearing nice watches and cufflinks? And so all I did was then after that, I walked past and took one look inside the premises. I saw at that time that there was 2 security guards that were in a fixed position and 1 security guard that was roaming through the premises. So I spent a total of 45 minutes on site. That's all I did for my background, like your work before attending and obviously trying to gain access to various areas and gain information with one of the large high-profile banks. The only other activities I did on that day was I went on LinkedIn and I typed in IT manager, and then the first name that came up on LinkedIn, I wrote that person's name down and just 2 or 3 facts off LinkedIn. So let's just say the lady's name was Robin Smith, and she'd been with this bank for 3 years, but previous to that was at the Bank of Canada. That was the entirety of my pretext because I wanted to check what level I needed to go to gain access. So I want to take you to the next day now. So the next day after I've done just that base level preparation, I now come back to this bank and I'm dressed the way that people are that go to this bank, which was pants and a shirt with no tie, no suit. The majority of people coming in there had a leather type satchel bag for things as well. So that's all I had. I came in and looking confident. As soon as I walked in, I saw the same guards that were there the day before. You had 2 guards in a fixed position and 1 guard that was roaming. within being on site and inside within 10 seconds, I realized that one of the guards in the fixed position would have been approximately at my age. So I literally walked over, stood beside that guard, and actually leaned back and stood against the wall. So that way, I wasn't blocking his vision. So I've put the video back on for a second with this, which hopefully you see if that comes on as well. But I stood next to that guard, so I was shoulder to shoulder to this guard. I turned to him and I said, "Look, before I do my work here with the bank, I just want to ask. I'm really keen to get into the security industry because what you guys do, it's a real position of trust with the way that you take care of people. Now, I know you go through so much training and a lot of you guys have martial arts training and a range of other things, but if you're not too busy, can you just give me a couple of minutes of advice on how I can start to be like you, how I can start with the security industry?" A couple of things occur from with that, especially for with males and of specific ages and that as well. Pride is a fantastic trigger. So as soon as I said, "I want to be like you, how can you help me be like you? I know that you do these fantastic things in training." This is what happened. The male's shoulders went up and back, and he turned to me and said, "It's not about how you can fight. It's about, how well you can speak and present. So let me share my thoughts with you." So I thought, you're my guy. That gentleman then, because of the fact that I'd hit his pride trigger, wanted to share information with me. And one of the things, without going too much into this part, because I don't want to bore you with the science part, but people sharing secrets has the same chemical response. So if you're sharing secrets with somebody that you like or that you think likes you, you get the dopamine and oxytocin release the same as if somebody's showing affection, or even with people that like chocolate. So it's that same reward. So because this person felt that, because I hit his pride trigger, he wanted to share information. So as soon as he started sharing things, it made him feel good because he felt like he was sharing some special things with me. So the conversation started and I said, "Wow, so this bank is open for quite a long time. I need to ask, does that mean you stand still here in this same spot between 9 a.m. in the morning and 4 o'clock? And he said, no, we change every 90 minutes. I change with Bob. Bob goes down to the loading dock, and then we change that way. And I said, "Oh, the loading dock. Oh, that must be where you guys get the money delivery come in." And he said, "Oh, we just get the one delivery at about 11 o'clock, but there's not much activity down there." So as the conversation went on, I started asking him about, "Oh, these cameras are great. You guys must get up there and have a look at what's going on." He said, "Oh, at 1 o'clock, I change for Eddie, who's up in the control room and things as well." So because I came in dressed in a non-threatening manner, touched on his pride point for things as well, he felt comfortable sharing that information. So over the space of being there for approximately 35 minutes, I mapped out their entire security routine, time on and off, rotations, where there was vulnerabilities with their site, purely because I did not come across as being a threat. And that's what happens. And that's why the focus on social engineering is so important, because in essence, when people first go to a site or they're meeting someone new, there's a couple of questions that you naturally ask if you're seeing a stranger. And these are questions that aren't verbalized. It's, who are you? Are you of danger to me? What do you want? How long is this going to take? So if that's what people naturally think, if my appearance and my conduct when I arrive to a site answers those questions for them, then they're highly likely, once they get that feeling of comfort, to allow me to gain the access and the information that I'm trying to seek from them. So from that point of view, as I said, you can see there's probably less in-depth work needed as part of that pretext than what you may have originally thought. In essence, what I'm trying to do is to build credibility with those people. So one of the other parts that I'll mention here, and this is, I'm going to say, the least attractive part as for what we do, is what we call dumpster diving. If you're inside a premises or an area that as well, we've got security personnel, we've got perimeter patrol, we've got lighting, we've got a range of elements in control with that layered security. What's often forgotten with an organization is the dumpster, and that's what we call dumpster diving. Because of things when they're actually thrown out and placed in the rubbish, a lot of organizations don't place the same focus on what's getting placed in there and who's going through that. So often with these as part of a review with a business, when we're checking outside, we see information about, and maybe something as simple as that I go through there and I get the details of your internet service provider or your telecom provider. So if I want to have a reason and sound realistic speaking to someone within your organization, I can call up and I'll say that I'm from this firm and there's been a change to your plan. And who's the best person to speak to, and just lead communications from there. So it's important to understand that not all of this is the upfront and high profile people interaction as well. In essence, content that can fall into the dumpster can provide a lot of information and a lot of different insight. This is like a really popular saying in this space, amateurs hack systems, but professionals hack people. So, I mean, at its base level with that, and one of my favorite pictures, part of hacking people is about what we're doing for that blending in piece. So the need to blend in. We're social creatures, and especially if the organization is very focused, for example, on customer service and engagement and these sort of things, then whilst that's good for the service parts of the business and for people that may have good intent, if somebody has bad intent or they're trying to gain access, that can be used as a weakness. So that's why, from that blending point of view, everything needs to be matched. So when we say for how we're going to blend in, it's not just the appearance as well. It's very important to understand that it's not just the appearance. Part of it as well is as part of with the engagement and interaction, how I'm managing that piece. So to give you an idea of that interaction I mentioned before in that financial institution, I could have handled that very, very differently. When I'm watching somebody for a while and watching their role, I look for a range of things. First, what do they bring to the conversation with them? That means, how are they attired? Are they somebody that, for example, if there's 3 or 4 security people, if there's the guy that's in the military pants with the big cap that says security, the military type watch, and a range of others, I know that person wants to have more of a dominant type approach. That's the appearance they're trying to put out. And the difference with this can be about asking what I'm saying with the question as well, or asking something about body language in that as well. If I'm trying to deal with somebody who is not that, and I'm trying to come in with a position of authority, my body language is going to be very direct. The way that I talk and the way that I gesture is going to be, for example, like this, with my hands down and saying, this is how I feel, or and being very, very direct. And up and direct. If, for example, I'm dealing with somebody who's dressed, either from watching their gesturing and their interactions, that is somebody who wants to be viewed as a very dominant person, if my outcome is to gain information and access, I'll change my appearance. I'll change the way that I react. Instead of saying like this, I would do the overhand and like in softer version saying like, okay, yeah, well, so that over there, can I ask a question about that? I do body language softness. So even though I'm over, 6 foot and bald headed with a beard, if I start doing the body language softness, which is touching my ears and things as well, rounding my shoulders to make a less threatening appearance, these things will make you feel comfortable. And also the other part is, if I start mimicking your body language, if I'm speaking to somebody, or even if it's across a desk and somebody's sitting like this with this hand up, over time, I'll put the opposite hand up. So I mirror their body language. I mirror their gestures. What happens is that person on a subconscious level says, I like this person. I feel comfortable. What they don't realize is they're feeling that way because they're seeing elements of themselves in how I'm acting. And that's part of that blending in. It's part of gaining that trust as well. And that influence is what starts this part about being able to get the information and flow into access. So as I said, when a person dresses, walks and talks the way we think, those questions get answered yet that haven't been asked. Who are you? Why are you here? Are you a threat to me? And how long is this going to take? Because, I'm quite busy. Everybody in essence is quite time poor. So just another image into showing with the right preparation and blending, you can fit into any example. Blending has been, and I'm going to say 24 to 36 months ago, so a couple of years ago, in essence, in a large amount of places and around the globe, if you wanted to get access to a place, you just needed to wear a high-vis vest, have a notebook, and speak with some authority. We've evolved a little bit with that now, but I've got to say, nowhere near as much as what I would have liked to have done. So it's a matter of, regardless of any of these other elements that are in place, that perimeter patrol, that if we've made CEPTED, and for those that are across that crime prevention through environmental design, manipulation of the environment from a security point of view, to help extend that security sphere of influence. If we've got that then with additional electronic security, manpower security, and that right blend, all those things are important, but it still needs to be supported by that security culture and that challenging culture as well. I see organizations where, in essence, they focus a lot of their efforts on front areas, front of house, the main areas, receptions and other parts, but their loading docks, their delivery areas, they don't place the same level of attention in there, and they can be some of the biggest vulnerabilities as well. And I'll give some other examples of that a bit later on as well. So from a uniform point of view, obviously in there, that face when you want the respect of a soldier, but the fake uniform hasn't fooled everybody. Impersonation is another part with that from the access and from a uniform point of view. So part of it is what's being realistic with the site. If you've got a site, for example, in entertainment premises, or a hospitality type premises, they have food suppliers, drink suppliers, cleaners, flower deliveries, a range of other things. So as part of any prep before attending a site is getting a feel for what type of suppliers and others they have, and that becomes part of the pretext. In essence, from that point of view, the best versions of pretext in uniform are ones that come through as being for positions of trust. So if they're in any way, relating to police, sheriff, security, even medical and other parts, they're often less challenged because, especially if the level of attire is of any decent quality, then it gives some indication about that position of authority as well. And based with that, it brings with it an initial level, like a base level of trust. So a couple of elements here you can see, I suppose, like if with this summary circle, to give you a bit of an update, is with an organization that we're going to be going to, how do we get that baseline? So because there's multiple parts in here, and this is, I suppose, a bit of a summary from a social engineering point of view, what we look at. Information gathering. What can we see about this organization and where we're going to try and gain access to? And obviously flipping this here, if I'm the security consultant or security manager, you'd be doing this in reverse. If somebody's trying to get access to our organization or information, what would they be looking at? So do that review, social media, the websites, other parts, where are they going to get information? Our tech people, do they put, for example, on their LinkedIn page what systems we use or what they specialize in and others? Because that's free available information. The threat modeling and vulnerability analysis, and obviously we can go into more depth about that, probably not have the time with this session, but doing the planning there. Where is their vulnerabilities? Is it at key timings? Is it about the fact, if with their people, are their people unhappy? If their people are disloyal, then that's another opportunity from a vulnerability point of view that you pick up on that. And how do we use that as part of the planning as well? You've got the exploitation, which is obviously then gaining access, gaining information, and then the follow-up elements, post-exploitation, the follow-up reporting of that. So that's just to give you a feel, I suppose, about some of the actual stages in there as well. This bit, and it's probably my favorite bit to talk about with these parts of the presentations, about the use of non-verbals and how important that is. I look at this regardless if it's about from this element we're talking about, social engineering. How do I change elements about my behavior, my conduct, including my gestures, my non-verbals, but also elements as well with the verbals that I change, such as what volume do I speak with, what pace and what spaces do I place between the words that I'm using if I want somebody to feel comfortable and to feel relaxed with me. And then you've got obviously samples like this. Now, this example that I've put up here is a slide that's a pretty commonly shared slide. There's a whole range of these things that as individual elements, you wouldn't be relying or basing your judgment on. In essence, there's some people that have done some absolutely fantastic work in this space. If it's something you're not across already and this at all is of interest to you, I heavily recommend looking at Dr. Paul Ekman's work that he did with the FACS system with micro expressions and a range of other parts. Joan Navarro on body language and a range of other things, because it's the combination with those that in essence is effective across all elements within our industry. Helping build rapport with people, helping engage and get some level of trust and opening the communication lines is important if you're doing marketing or business development and you're trying to build trust. It's important if you're a security consultant and you're trying to work with an organization and truly partner with them in that position of trust that you're doing from a security point of view to help ensure they protect all of their assets, which is people, property, information, and reputation. But also for the frontline, your people that are working and doing security security work, they deal with people often in potentially volatile situations affected by emotion, drugs, alcohol, violence, aggression, a whole range of things. Having an awareness of body language, having an awareness of changes with their spacing and distancing from you, let alone their hand gesturing and those sort of things, and the facial expressions, can be absolutely fantastic for helping to identify if there's escalating conflict occurring or if the path that your conversation is taking is not going down the right path. It can be of great benefit. So the non-verbal, there's certain things that we do as part of our interaction with people that is quite natural. There's also ones that we do that we share that in essence where, because they're universal with what we do, no words need to be attached. If I asked everybody here what would be the natural body language response if you were trying to say to somebody, I don't know, it's the shrug and the hands up, you know what I mean? Those sort of things are natural response, so kinesics, like your response that help pass on a message or reiterate as well part of the message that we're trying to put forward. The other part for that is things that we call emblems. Emblems can be things such as stop or no, it's okay. Those sort of emblems, those sort of elements are all elements that as part of the totality. So if I'm dealing with somebody, do I stand square on with my body square on to them, shoulders back, authoritative body language with my chin up? If that's the sort of person that I'm dealing with, that I want to come across with authority, and I believe because of their body language and their interactions that they may be slightly submissive or the person is not going to challenge authority, that may work. But the gentleman that I explained earlier, that is everybody he's dealing with, he's standing and posturing up from his body language, or he's using the avert and assertive body language in that stance. This sort of approach is not going to get me the traction and the progression I want from him. So I can play to that by changing my body language and interaction. So it's just really important to make sure that, to understand that this is a key element, understanding the totality about the communication, how you gain influence, how you open communication lines. I know we've all heard the lines before about, it's only a small percentage about what you're saying. It's more about how you say and how you present. And that's why this is absolutely crucial. So make sure we get that point out. In a very, very simple sentence, the way I like to explain this is your mouth speaks to your ears, speaks to their ears, but your hands speak to their eyes. And I like that because it's a very simple takeaway. So just has a complete separate, I suppose, like your takeaway from with this, your mouth speaks to their ears like your hands speak to their eyes. If you think that from a communication point of view, then you understand the importance of gesturing. You understand the difference of how much that can reinforce, what you're trying to communicate. So at its base level with this, I need to work out, for me to gain influence and to build some rapport with the people that I'm liaising with, am I best placed to come in with boss-like authority or more of a submissive or sympathetic type approach? What's going to help this person feel more comfortable with me? What's going to help remove their nervousness and their discomfort? And then I adjust obviously my approach based on that. The fundamental part, and I mentioned this earlier as part of with the presentation, is people like people that like them. So as part of my interaction with you, if my body language and the words that I'm using, in essence, is giving you the impression that I like you and I think you're a very positive person, and I'm building that rapport, then that's something that's going to make you feel comfortable, because you're going to feel happy, like, and comfortable with me, because the fact is you're feeling liked. You're feeling that, wow, this person thinks I'm a good person. Okay, this guy's all right. And same as what I said before from how people get that response, that chemical response about oxytocin, it's the same feeling that you get when you trust somebody and give them a secret. You get that oxytocin and dopamine feel. So it's a positive response. You actually, it's something that you feel within your body. It's a chemical reaction. And so that's why social engineering can be so effective. If I find the right path that's going to make you feel happy, comfortable, and trusting with me, and because of that, you share some information or some secrets with me, and I'm making you feel very positive for doing so, then that's something that people feel like they get that reward feeling, and they'll continue to do that. And that's why often they'll share information that may not be in their best interest to do so. The other part is, and I'll turn the camera back on for this, like a bit as well, is the bottom line you can see there, which is my emotions, your brain. Especially people that are naturally, if they're not dominant or assertive personalities, then what happens is the combination of my emotions, the way that I'm acting with people, stores with people, and it affects their behavior. So to give you some idea on how I use this and some other examples, if I'm trying to gain access to a premises, this was the very next day for that same financial institution that I mentioned earlier. I found that they had a separate area, which is a separate access around another area to the building that was to their management levels and like administration and management levels. From doing that full lap, I found that they had a guard that was stationed there, and that guard's #1 duty was to make sure that there was no unauthorized entry that would get past them and into the lifts and upstairs. I did exactly the same preparation that I did previously. I had a person's name that was like that IT manager upstairs. I made sure that I was going into this office at about 9:15, because if somebody's going to try and use anxiety and stress to try and get past somebody, they're going to come around and they're going to show that they're anxious. So in essence, this person that was there, I came around dressed well and dressed similarly to other people that they see that day. I was carrying 3 coffees, because if I'm carrying 3 coffees and I come around looking anxious and I've got somebody's name that I'm mentioning I'm going to be meeting with, I can tell you so far, I'm sitting at about 95% access to most places just from doing that. Because the average person, if they see me dressed well, if I communicate well and I'm confident, I've got somebody's name and I'm carrying 3 coffees, are they honestly going to stop me and say, can you stop? I know you're obviously anxious, but can you put the coffees down and give me your ID? I can tell you with the majority of times, and with that exact example, I walked around the corner carrying the coffees and going, oh look, I'm running late. I've got a meeting with Jan upstairs, and the person just swiped me straight through. So it's very, very powerful understanding from a communication point of view. If my facial expressions, my body language, and the emotion that I'm showing, if I get that right, then my emotion is going to resonate in your brain, and that's going to affect your behavior and conduct. And that's a very, very important part as well. So I may overtly show elements of that emotion, that anxiousness and that pressure. And the thing is, especially if you've got good-natured people, they want to help. And that's what happens. So this is an example, obviously, of that with this image. As part of the preparation, tying this together from a social engineering point of view, if I'm conducting those tests, I'm trying to physically do some physical penetration, I'm gaining access to the site, I'll have a look at that. I'll see about how the engagement is like. When is the busy time for these people coming through? So in essence, they're under more pressure. So if I come in carrying those coffees in a high pressure time, and I'm making eye contact like you're with them as well, and they're getting that feeling of trust, that's highly likely going to enhance my chances of being allowed access to the premises. In essence, what I'm trying to do, and I'm mindful of time, so I'm not going to have time to really expand on this, is it's about building reciprocity. If I come in and I'm carrying those coffees and saying, oh, mate, I'm running late for this meeting with whoever, and mentioning the name, gee, you guys must really get swamped up here, mate. You got such a hard job. You know, I really appreciate the stuff that you guys do. that's some level of reciprocity. I get some level of obligation from that. So that person then feels, whether it's a social obligation or whatever, that they need to do something back for me, which can be that quick access or a range of other things. So it can be things as simple as that. That's part of what happens when we tie that all together. And the thing is, I think, with this, and that's why I say the whole, let's be honest here, if you have a look at your organization and in the different areas, whether it be the dock master in the loading dock, whether it be the front reception area, or whatever like this may be, think of the different elements either of the organization that you're involved in or the organizations that you provide security services and advice to. If somebody comes in that's dressed similar to people coming in to the premises on a regular basis, has got that combination of stress, anxiety, and emotion, is carrying things like 3 coffees and that as well, and has a credible backstory because they're mentioning somebody's name, what they're discussing and that as well, and they build that empathy. If you can honestly say, hand on heart, that you have no concern that that person would get through, then I would absolutely take my hat off. I can tell you, the majority of organizations, there's some element of vulnerability there. So it's just important to be mindful with these things. The way that I look at this and with any organization, and I suppose another very simple takeaway is that people with good intent want to be noticed and engaged. People with bad intent don't. And because of that, if I'm coming in trying to build that rapport and that eye contact and building that reciprocity, there's a high chance that I'm building a rapport, with people and getting that access. I put this in now just for, I suppose, a bit of an example for the whole, regardless of the situation and circumstance, is that you're always going to have people that from trying to gain access are going to try and do so from some element of, credibility and backstory and others. And another fundamental part that I'll mention, and I'm very, very mindful of this, I'm also mindful of time, is that if it's something that you are starting to look at doing about with the physical penetration testing and using social engineering and a range of other things, please ensure that when you're doing that, as part of what you're doing, make sure you obtain a letter of authority from with that client. I have heard some absolute horror stories where clients have engaged security professionals or security consultants to do some physical penetration testing. They've done their preparation, they've got their pretext, they've gone to site, gone through these activities, and as part of that, they have been noticed. They've been obviously looking at by security or people on site and have been challenged, and they don't have any validation as to the reason that they're there. So another part I mentioned, and I always make sure I mention when discussing these parts and social engineering getting access, is make sure that you've got a letter of authority as well, because that's that. I'm not going to say get out of jail free card, but it's something in essence like that is going to allow to make sure that you got some justification as to why you're there. So that's it from a presentation point of view. I tried to get it as close as I could to right on 45 minutes based on what you said, Chico.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
for any
Scott.
questions if there's any.
Yeah,
No
thank you for the presentation. So it's maybe the first question from me. I just want to know whether there's a way what they call as a pro-social behavior. So do you think is pro-social behavior also related in this case?
What type of behavior? I didn't catch the first part.
Pro-social behavior. So it means that we make engage other people emotion. So they, yes. It's the same. I mean, that it's in the same vein with this discussion.
Yeah, very much so. I just haven't heard that term or that title, pro-social behavior. But in essence, yeah, the most people, especially with sensitive sites and a range of other parts as well, as part of that preparation is it's not just about that pretext, having the right words for things as well. It is the totality of picture that you're presenting. And so from that perspective, if somebody's truly planning and trying to gain access to your premises, they're going to be making sure they've got background information on individual elements. They're going to mention one or two parts from a familiarity point of view. So there's that level of feeling of comfort as well. And they're going to try and organize to build, obviously, that through emotion, through a combination of parts as well, to build that trust, that reciprocity. So 100% taking into account, people's emotions. And that's why if I'm trying to gain access to a loading dock, for example, because I've got some concerns with the premises that's a vulnerability, I'll often watch for a while. And if I see that person in the loading dock who does a bit of work and then they're bored or on their phone with things as well, as part of my initial part, I might come in saying I'm doing an assessment and saying, you know, you guys are really disciplined, mate, in this environment where often you've got times of inactivity. It must be so hard to keep motivated. So, you know, you got mate, absolutely fantastic. I say those sort of things and the person goes, oh yeah, you're right. You know, nobody really understands that. I've now got that person on site. So they walk me around often and tell me what I need to know.
Okay, thank you. Is there any question from the audience? So please do so, if any. Kalau ada pertanyaan dari teman-teman juga silakan, nanti saya akan terjemahkan kalau ada yang merasa lebih nyaman dengan bertanya dalam bahasa Indonesia.
Hi Scott, this is Joe. You looking good?
Hi Joe. Hey Joe. How you going, mate?
Good. Hey Scott, I just have a quick question. Keeping in mind that you know there's a lot of human weakness that can be exploited, right? So, with that in mind, have you had cases of a test penetration where the human factor, identifying that the human factor was the weakness, it's then replaced by, for example, you know, technology or IT or some sort of, you know, robotics to foolproof that? Thank you.
Fantastic question. In some elements, yes. So I'm a big believer. If you think, I'm going to say 5 or 6 years ago, it was responses, and I'm going to say even in the 90s was guns, guards, and gates was the response. Then we got back to now, how do we enhance people being alert and vigilant, and how do we support their data sources with technology and a range of other feeds? Then you've got programs like, and if you're not familiar with it, but Michael Rosen's SIRA program and what he did with the Mall of America, where in essence, rather than a whole range of security personnel, they started doing behavioral analysis training and some base profiling training, and they were able to get a better result, even with less security and more effective. The technology piece, I think we've progressed a lot with that, but I think at the moment now, the end user clients and a lot of the organizations at the moment, because they haven't really understood, I don't think as an industry globally, we've managed the communication on that very, very well. There's things at the moment, and obviously from facial recognition cameras and things that we do from crowd density numbers and other elements as well, and other behavioral analytics, where there can be some great indicators, but it's important to understand that there's still the human factor as part of that. Some other technical points, like with that, where it's been used well. There is a Israeli product called UVI, which in essence is, because of some vulnerabilities in loading dock areas and others as well, because of the human factor. And to be honest, because of the laziness often with under vehicle searches, this product UVI is mounted on the driveway, and if a vehicle drives over it at approximately any speed under 45 kilometers an hour, which in loading docks they do, it takes about 2,000 images in 3 seconds, turns it into a 3D scan, maps it against the manufacturer's database, and will tell you if there's any unusual items, even down to half the size of a USB stick under that device, even if it's muddy. If you couple that with license plate and facial recognition, then it means from an access point of view, if the same delivery driver and with the same face and everything like it's the same with the vehicle, they can get some element of access. If it's the same vehicle and no issues, but different driver, hold an audible alert. So there's different elements of that being tying in, and now you've got the hygienic no-touch parts as well. So there's elements of it, but to my liking, I don't believe the communication on the integration has been managed really well. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you for the question, Joe. Any further question from other participants? Hi, Peter. I saw Peter here. Peter Tan. Ada pertanyaan?
Okay, I like your 6-star general picture. So did that guy actually manage to get through?
Oh, that part of the uniform. Yeah, that actually wasn't one of my ones. But we've had some really interesting uses of uniform and a range of others. Part of it with an organization is some organizations say, we're feeling very secure, so we want things at this level. Others say, look, we're not very confident. Can we check at what level it takes for you to gain access and gain that confidence for things as well? And there's been times as simple from just going onto a website and getting an operations manager's name and that cup of coffee with no other pretext research or others, I'm gaining access. The third part, and I'm sometimes hesitant in saying this, but the third part to that banking story that I shared with you was they had another executive office, and with the banking facilities over here, because they're trying to reduce the footprint that they have, like obviously with how many sites that they've got. So they changed over a lot of their sites to hot desks. So rather than people having their own same desk and same thing, when they came to work, they sign on, and when they sign on from their thing, all the materials are stored in a locker. They can't store anything in a desk because they don't have their own desk. So when they sign on for the morning, they get a thing that says, you're on floor 7, desk 27. And at the same time, then a computer turns on that desk and gives them their access they normally have. Whilst that saves them a lot of money because they're not having, obviously, desks for everybody because they're rotating, what that means is you've got different people working in different groups every day. And so when I did that approach on the next day, same thing with the coffees and others, I was able to go through and gain access to their sites. And so I was in 3 different floors and sat in on meetings. They did an emergency management evacuation drill when it was there, that I was there, and I actually helped them and gave them some support. And it was purely because, of those sort of elements. So yeah, that pretext and everything is getting in one part, but unless there's that challenging culture, I've got to say, I was on site for 3.5 hours and I did not get questioned by one person across multiple levels and meetings and others. So often, unfortunately, you don't even need that.
Yep, that's quite interesting that they don't know you don't belong there. They just probably treat you as a new guy. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. 100%. And the thing is, with this as well, it's important to understand that as part of the subsequent reporting, when I'm going back to businesses, I preface it and say, part of the briefing and training that your frontline people have got in these various positions are to be customer service focused and be engaging. So then to hold them accountable and say, how did this person get past you? We've got to also, the organization has to look at what training do they get as part of their induction. Are they told, regardless of who this person is or who they say they are, you check this ID, you check they're on the attendee list, you make sure all visitors are escorted, those sort of items, being in place. So it's about having that discipline as part of that organizational culture. Any other questions?
Yeah, it's interesting, Scott. You just mentioned just now about the organizational culture. So is there any way to use the corporate culture or organizational culture in this case as the complement or for this case, for your topic even?
Yeah, very much so. I truly look at, in essence, security and organizational resilience should be on every single person's job line in an organization, regardless of any department that you're in, on any work that you're doing. We all have a role to play with that, and everybody within the organization. And so from that organizational culture point of view, knowing that there's some structure, some planning and transparency on that, in essence, that the organization that you're either working for or providing advice to has an awareness of its risk appetite and its approach to how it deals with these elements is very clear and supported, then it's going to be very, very powerful. Mm-hmm. Even if it's for the small part that if you're in an organization that's not looking after its employees, they're not going to go the extra mile and really challenge me to step out of their comfort zone. Why are they going to care? So there's the security element and what I call self-regulating culture, which is important to understand that, hey, we need to support each other as a business and prop each other up and keep each other aligned to these values that keep us safe and well and achieve our objectives. So it's very important.
Okay, because sometimes some organizations implement their security culture in their organization. So everyone have a high alertness and awareness about the security importance.
Yeah, it's sometimes there's that high level of alertness, but part of it is they need to be able to have the confidence and the skills to be able to challenge and to do something about that. So you raise a really important point. There's people that have got their people alert and vigilant. We want you knowing and checking, but they don't give them some practical training. They don't run them through scenario training. Whether it's phishing emails and saying, here's some basic tips. Make sure you hover your mouse over the link. Don't just click a link. There's some basic things as to what good and safe emails look like compared to behaviors as well. If you're dealing with somebody that's pressing you for information, here is what you need to do and how you need to deal with that. So it's taking a bit more of a rounded look to what they do for their training and induction.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Scott. Any question from the audience? Atau ada pertanyaan dari teman-teman mengenai?
Ya, Pak Chico.
Ya, Pak Satrio. Silakan Pak Adi.
Yep. Scott, it was an interesting presentation here. I'd like to further Joe's question about the usage of IT or technology. But as you know, in Indonesia, most of the business still prioritize human manpower in terms of your guarding. And how would you suggest us to increase the guarding's awareness and understanding on this kind of social engineering trick to get into our sites?
Yeah, fantastic question. Thank you. I'm a big believer on. There's a lot of benefits to the integration of technology, but it still needs to be human driven. There's going to be that frontline interaction, or there's going to be reviewing that data, even if it's analytics and trend data, to be helping to make that adjustment. So the first training piece, situational awareness and environmental awareness, I know is pretty standard as part of security programs. From my your point of view, some of the elements I mentioned before, so facial expressions and changes in tone and pace of wording and these sort of things, they're quite often the indicators. So I'm a very big believer in the provision of any training about baseline behavior awareness. I think is very, very powerful because it flows into so many different elements. If they're in positions that they're dealing with people that work within the organization and people of high respect, then that same training shows them how they should communicate and build rapport and show respect. But if there's people coming that have bad intent, that base behavior profiling, and especially when it comes to facial expressions and others, is very, very powerful. So that would be my first point of call for additional training is some basic behavior profiling training, including facial expressions. Paul Ekman's work, there's a lot of material out, even books and YouTube videos and a whole range of content. And that's a really good start. Paul Ekman and Joe Navarro is a great start. One of the best people in the world. I mean, I've been doing this for 28 years now on security, safety, and risk. And we were speaking, Chico and I were speaking about this earlier. I've got my own security podcast called Securely Speaking, where I talk about all different elements of the industry because I want to share some information being diverse. I was really thankful that I suppose the one person in this element of the industry, the person I would consider the best in the world is a gentleman called Chris Hadnagy, which is socialengineer.org. And I reached out to him and just said about how much I admire parts for his work. So I was lucky enough to interview him with my podcast. So reading anything that comes out from Chris Hadnagy and looking at some of Dr. Paul Ekman's work, whether it's just some of the free booklets and brochures or some of the videos, I honestly think that's a really good start. And you'll find that will spark some additional interest and benefit of that as well. That's where I would start for sure.
Thanks, Scott. It was a good insight and information.
Thank you.
Talking about your podcast, can you put in the chat your podcast, so maybe audience wants also to see your podcast?
Sure.
Just put in the chat. So
okay, I'll find that now on the other part, and the other part. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. I know I'm connected to Chico and Seiji-san and a couple here as well, and I'm always happy to stay in contact, with security professionals around the globe. We've got, such a wonderful network to support each other. So I'm definitely thankful for the opportunity to share some of my thoughts with you as well, and happy to stay in touch. But yeah, no, I'm happy to share the details for the podcast, and no problems at all. I'll click that through now. I'm just grabbing the link.
Okay, thank you. So, any further question from the audience? Ada pertanyaan dari teman-teman? Pak Andreas? Biasanya Pak Andreas ada pertanyaan, Pak Andreas?
Okay, there you go. The link's there. The link's there. So if you click on that, the link's there. I'm just about to release another interview I did 2 days ago with a company called Data Miner. Another part, if there's something of interest, definitely Google Data Miner. Data Miner does real-time information. So in other words, they've got 105,000 different information sources such as Twitter, Facebook, Internet of Things sensors, and a range of other things. So they then use that and give information ahead of when often news and first responders find out about it. The situation in Barcelona where that gentleman drove the car through the square, they gave their members 28 minutes advance notice before news and police. So that's going to be the next episode. So yeah, please have a look at the podcast. Leave any rating or comment as well. I'm trying to obviously let you do some more of that. So no problems. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Okay, so ada pertanyaan lagi dari teman-teman? Oke, kalau nggak ada di chat room sudah disampaikan podcast dari Scott yang bisa disimak ya. So you have five episodes already, right?
Yeah, 5's up there, and number 6 is about to go up. And I've just had 4 more people booking for interviews. So I talked about healthcare security. I've talked about some elements of conflict resolution, a range of parts in there. Now social engineering and real time. So yeah, there's a couple. I'm about to do some on open source information as well. So I really want to try and share as much information to shine the light on how broad and deep the skill sets of our industry is. So same thing, once you've read the podcast, if there's any other ideas or areas you want me to cover as well, I want to make this beneficial for our industry. So please let me know any other areas, and I also appreciate sharing and listening to the podcast. So thank you, Chica.
Okay, thank you, Scott, once again for being our speaker for this webinar. So since there's no further question from the audience, on behalf of ASIS Indonesia, we would like to thank you for participating and supporting our chapter for this event. And then we also thanks to everyone that joined today's webinar. It's become international now. Usually it's all Indonesian, but now we have Japanese. We have from Singapore, from Malaysia, from Hong Kong, yeah, and then and other part of the world also. So thank you so much. So wait a second. So do we need to have a picture, a photo? Anggit, where's Anggit? Felix Anggit. Everyone names Felix Anggit here.
Yeah, I was going to say we've got lots of Felixes.
Okay. Can we take a picture for a while? I mean, please activate your camera, please. Okay.
Well, all you Felixes put your camera on.
So Felix. Okay. So I believe there are 2 session picture. So Mr. Adi, can you turn on your camera? Okay. Okay, so as Mr. Haryanto. Okay, so this is the first time. So we have 2 sessions, okay? Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and then this is the second one. 1, 2, and 3. Thank you so much, everyone. So hopefully we can see you again in the next month webinar. Please keep in touch. You can check in our Instagram account or Twitter, and then also from a website. So once again, thank you, Scott. Thank you. It's very, very interesting topic. And then I believe it also give a benefit to everyone that joined these webinars. And I believe that you already booked for Japan chapter.
I just saw the message. Happy to, definitely happy to do that, like as well, and happy to support, obviously, like everybody in the various chapters wherever I can. I'll let you know when I'm coming over, because I'm definitely going to come over and do some more training with Joe. One of the best experiences I had in my life. So I will make sure I come over as soon as I'm able.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. See you again. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.